to Coffee and Conversation. My name is Honorine, and today I'm with Warren Oliver, who is pursuing a PhD in international and multicultural policies, but is also one of the assistant director for undergraduate research and academic engagement. Warren, thank you for being with me today.
I will go ahead and do my introduction at this point. I'm one of the associate directors at the Center for Undergraduate Research and Academic Engagement, and I'm also doing my international and my PhD in international and multicultural ed policy. However, just to kind of tell you a little bit more about myself, I so I grew up in Tallahassee actually. So I'm originally from Tallahassee, but ended up moving away at 18. I did my undergrad at Loyola New Orleans, and I was pretty much living between New Orleans and Cimarron, New Mexico, over the summers where I worked for the Boy Scouts of America for a while. And then I ended up studying and graduating with a bachelor's in political science and my two minors, one in French language and sociology. Um, After that, I ended up moving to Istanbul to teach English around 2013, and I ended up living there for another 7 years. And while I was living there, I was teaching English for a while, and then I ended up running an English immersive program for students to be able to really work and get in touch with native speakers and do stuff from outside of there. During that time, I picked up a master's from Bahçeşehir University, which is a beautiful campus right on the Bosphorus in Istanbul, in Beşiktaş, next to Dolmabahce Palace, if you know where those are. And yeah, I ended up doing that, and then at that point, I that was so that I could learn how to write curriculums and doing that sort of stuff. Um, Meanwhile, at that time, I had really maintained a connection that I had started beforehand because I had gone through the TOEFL program at CIS at FSU. And we were coming back pretty regularly to be able to recruit new graduates into that program in Turkey for teachers for the summer. And so it was one of those in my connections. And as I was going back and forth around 2016, I ended up talking to people, and they're like, well, Warren, what's next? You're finishing up your master's. And I said, I really like doing policy. I really like languages. And they said, well, we do have a international educational policy program at FSU. And so at that point, there was just a lot of competing issues. And my wife, who is Turkish, and I just decided, you know what, let's go for it. And I ended up moving and actually living in between Istanbul and Tallahassee for about my first 3 years of my PhD program. So when I was taking classes, I would be in Tallahassee during that time, and then I would come back. I would go back to Turkey, run the program. So I was actually working remote pre-quarantine and really doing a lot of the stuff hybrid. Um, and then I wound up getting hired in the winter of 2020. The winter of 2019, I heard about, and I ended up applying for a job at CRE, which is where I'm currently at. So I got hired in January of 2020. So still technically the winter, but I got hired at CRE right to run the Global Scholars Program, as well as FSU's Gap Year program, which is lesser known, but is currently um, we have a cohort of students coming in, but it's going to be sunset and kind of keep with the Global Scholars Program. Um, but I was essentially hired to run those two programs exclusively, um, right as I came into candidacy for my program. So it's interesting because I feel, if I can give a directional mark here, but like I think this is a good summary. I feel really like, since being a PhD student, I kind of inhabit a lot of different half worlds, if that makes sense. Being half a student, half staff, being half, kind of almost like an international student, but I didn't have a lot of the paperwork, because I did live for so long outside of the United States and then came back. But I'm also half technically local, so I kind of inhabit a lot of different spaces, which has been interesting. Um, I think one of the nice things that I've really liked about doing it is, as you can tell from that story and kind of me just rattling off a lot of places, I've had a lot of experiences and time to be able to talk to people of all ages. Um, but I overall, like, it's been nice because I feel being at FSU and really focusing more on these experiential educational opportunities has really helped me, make sense of a lot of the stuff that, like, just kind of seems random, if you wanted to put that way, from like age 14 to 16, when like I would go on trips and do stuff with the Boy Scouts of America, all the way to like when I was living in Turkey, and kind of like random stuff, and you're like, oh, I want to do this. It's been able to kind of help me put things together.
Talking about more like the research aspect of your PhD,
Yeah.
um, what do you have in mind as a research project?
So, provided it gets approved to go through there, my actual research right now, is to look at students and how students experience gap years, specifically in between high school and undergrad, and really looking at the levels of organization and how that changes their perceptions of their gap years. So you have, for example, like very organized programs that will say, if you were to do something like NOLS, which is National Outdoor Leadership School, or um, Young Judea, which is one of those that's in Israel. They say, hey, we have, a completely organized program. You come in, we have experiences built in, whether it's internships or stuff like that. Um, and looking at how students experience in those fields versus, those completely independent gap year of somebody that's just like, I'm going to take the year off, and I'm going to go do my own thing. And then there's a lot of shades of gray in between, but kind of looking at those and trying to find really what students experience within there. So that's the short answer right now. We'll see how the IRB comes back on that, though.
How do you manage being a student and a faculty and a staff member?
Um, I mean, I think that is it's a big question, because it is a lot when you look at it, but I feel at the same time it's learning how to go through the whitewater. So I mean, it's one of those things that it I always think of stress a lot like whitewater in that sort of situation. I don't know if you've been whitewater rafting before, but you can have very calm moments, and then all of a sudden you get rapids, and that's where like the crazy moments happen. And what I've learned is just learning how to feel through those moments, right? And so you're going to come through, of course, there's organization, there's a schedule that you make, knowing when due dates are due and what paperwork is to get through there. But I think it's also learning how to find those moments where you have to say, okay, I'm going to be working a lot, or I have this research project that needs to be done. This is how I'm going to do it. This is the time that I need to devote to it, and vice versa. I think the hardest part about doing that versus having, a GA ship or something along those lines is you kind of become the last line of kind of questions for that also as the faculty person. So it's not, you have to understand that even though your research is important, even though your program is important, you have to be able to balance that and say, yes, but I need to make time for students. Yes, but I need to be able to go through there. Um, and I do hope that my students don't feel like I'm like I've swept them under the rug while I'm working on that. But I think that it is something learning how to do both is difficult, but it's one of those that kind of, if that makes sense, you just have to understand that you can't do everything and learning how to feel where you should be going.
So besides work and school, how do you relax? What do you like to do in your spare time?
I've recently taken up gardening. That was a big thing. I do enjoy that. I tend to take a lot of walks, and I don't know, I still like to passively like learn, and like I'll tend to watch, like an interesting documentary or something like that along those lines. But I think for me it's a lot of go, 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 and trying to find those calm moments. So what I've noticed is that like the things that I try to do to relax might have a physically might be have a lot of physical labor involved of like picking something up, but it's kind of just almost like that mind numbing enjoying stuff right there. But
For my last question, where do you see yourself in 5 years from today?
I mean, honestly, and this might be the part of what I'm trying to do. I know how I would want to answer that question in certain situations, but I think at this point I've gotten to this point of trying to focus on completing the program, and I'm so close that I've almost, not to say I've gotten tunnel vision or anything along those lines, but I don't want to plan too far out
Mhm.
until that's done. So hopefully, because it could be I'd be like, "Oh, I wanna do this," and then 5 years later, I just feel like something's still going on with it. So, honestly, I wanna be done with my PhD, um, and I still wanna be working in the field, whatever capacity that may be, um, but hopefully we'll see what comes out of it, right? So, it should be good.
Yeah, it will be good. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was great to know more about your background and your research and your gardening hobby.
It's good. But yeah. And it was good to talk to you as well. And I hope, everything else goes great for you. And fingers crossed, everything you have a fantastic 5-year plan and that it works out for you as well. So